Harmut Rosa is now coming for not more than 20 minutes. Ja. Oder du kannst auch hier drauf gucken. 20 sind dann 2056.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. This was the hard stuff. Now we turn to the strange stuff, as Stefan Lesnig said. Yeah, I'd like actually to thank all of you for coming here. I really think, to the conference in Leipzig, because this is, it shows something, right? I think it's a visible sign, and it's not just visible. You can also feel it, that people still care about the future of the world and about the future of the. This is not self-evident, right? We could, on the one hand, we could just give it up and think, okay, maybe we are lost anyway, or at least we don't know where we are going. So I think it's not just that you do care. It's also that I think coming here, at least to me, right, what you do is giving a sign and showing and demonstrating that you still have at least some faith in the idea that we can change the course of the world, right? That it's not a machine running. You were talking, Laura was talking about the neoliberal machine, but what she said, of course, also spoke to us in a sense that it's not a machine that cannot be changed, right? By acting together, by coming together, by sharing and developing ideas, and by caring about the future of the planet, I think we do something in minute, what I try to do theoretically. I would say maybe what we do here is creating a sphere of resonance that does have some consequences, right? We might not yet see what I know. For the longest part of my academic life, I was very skeptical too, and I thought, okay, we can talk, and it doesn't have any impact. But now I would actually change. Maybe it does have an impact. I just recently read, actually the other day, yesterday, I read Paul Williams. He's a rock journalist, and he was describing the spirit of Woodstock, right? And I think it's very interesting. It wasn't so much about argumentation. Woodstock was a musical thing, but maybe it's not an accident that music and politics in the 60s somehow came together, because what they really thought they can feel the motion. They could create a sphere of commonality and maybe a sphere of sound where he said they were convinced that this had an impact on the future of the earth. It wasn't just talking, right? Just making arguments. It was the idea of sharing a world and for caring about a world we share. And I think something of this might come out of it too. But before we get there, we have a problem. And this problem, I think, was described very neatly by Laura too. It's like we are in a machine which is geared towards growth. It's not just economic growth, right? What we can read from the gross domestic products. I think the main point, at least how I understood it from Laura, was that she said it's in our heads. Somehow it's in our head and our soul, this logic of growth and increase. And the question we are dealing with in this session is, how does it get there, right? And how could we get it out of our minds? And I think to understand how it gets there, first we need to see what it does. And I think, you would not be here if you didn't say, yes, there's a problem. We don't like this incessant need for growth and acceleration and innovation, which is totally empty, right? It never has an end. The logic of capitalist growth, you know that, right? It's that it's never enough. No matter, actually the problem is the more we grow this year, the more we have a problem next year because we have to top it, right? And it doesn't matter how fast you are this year, next year you have to be faster. So obviously this is idiotic, right? And all of us would say, okay, we live in a perverse system. But I think on the other hand, it's really fascinating, and I don't mean this in any way offensive. But if you look at ourselves, of course it's true that we replicate, we reproduce, we have totally internalized this logic of increase and growth. We do things like coming to a conference like this by airplane, of course, for just one day. This is what all of us do. I know, we do all of these things, and I have an iPhone, and I know it's bad, but we all, it's not me, it's the system, you know. But I think even if you look at degrowth conferences, I find it fascinating, and I think we need to understand it. It really aspires to grow. I mean, the organizers say we are more people than ever before, right? We have more panels. We create more media attention than we ever did before. And now we even have a live stream. That's perfect, right? But there you really see, and I'm honest when I say I don't mean it offensive, but you see, we totally replicate this logic, right? We create more attention, we create more people, we have more papers, more panels, and so on. And this is the way we think about ourselves and about the world, right? The logic of increase, of acceleration, of innovation. And in order to understand it, it's very important to see that how it gets there. As I said, I mean, one answer is to say, well, it's human nature, right? Human beings always strive for increased growth, innovation. And I think that's just not true. And then in the end, that's the neoliberal argument. They say, well, you just are that way. And that's maybe too bad for us, but it's human nature. But then it would just be greed or so. It would be a wrong attitude. And we could easily change it. And therefore, the first step, I think, is very important to see. It's a systemic need, right? It's built into the structures of society. A capitalist society in particular, right, cannot exist without growth. It's not a question of whether we want to increase. We simply have to. I mean, in the way we are organized at this moment. And this is not just true for the economy. I believe it's even true for universities and so on. When I look at what universities do, they try to prove we have more students, more third-party funding, more publications, and so on. But it's very easy to see with capitalism, right? Karl Marx, of course, would be an interesting theoretical starting point for this. The logic of increase is built into the system. It's money, commodity, money prime, right? Money is only set in motion in the form of capital if there is a promise for increase. And if the increase stops, you can see what happens then from Greece, for example, right? We lose jobs, companies close down, tax revenues decline, but the expenditure of the welfare state increase because of unemployment and so on. So you get a debt problem, and in the end you get even delegitimation of the current political system. So if we don't increase, if we don't grow, if we don't accelerate and innovate, we cannot stay as we are, but we slide back. Right, so one of my main points really is it's a systemic need for growth, and if we don't satisfy it, we cannot stay who we are. So my main diagnosis would be it's not the greed, the need for increase which is driving us in the first place, but it's the fear of losing ground, of not being able to sustain the status quo. So that would be the first argument, right? And that means, if that's true, I think it's very important conceptually, I would say, for all of us, a degrowth society, which we are aspiring to, that's why we call it post-growth in Jena actually, is not one that necessarily shrinks or that will never innovate or grow or accelerate. Because sometimes if you're short on bread, it would be a good idea to grow in the bread production, right? Or it's also good to innovate something against Ebola or cancer or other diseases. But we should overcome, what we are looking for is a system that does not necessarily need to grow, to increase, to speed up, to innovate in order to keep the status quo. But this is important because our degrowth community, right, is always in danger that people say, but look at people in Africa, they are starving from hunger, so don't you want growth there? So that's not a problem for a post-growth society, quite to the contrary, right? You can really show how through the current system, systematic scarcity is produced in Africa and elsewhere, right? Of course we want growth and innovation, but we want to overcome a system that needs to grow, innovate, accelerate in a blind way. Now, the interesting question is how is this system sustained through the subjects? And now I want to move in 3 steps. I have 12 minutes for this also. The first argument is it's coercion, right? To a large extent, we feel that we need to satisfy the logic of growth. As I said, I think we are driven by fear much more than by anxiety. But then the second step, which I find at current more interesting, is that I think we also want, because of a certain conception of the good life, it might be totally unnoticed by you or not conscious, but I think we are all driven by a logic of increase of a certain kind, and I want to explore this, and then I want to say how we can get out of it. Okay, first point, how does it get into our minds? And my first argument is by coercion, and that's very close to what Laura said, right? I think somehow we are always, what I say, subjects of guilt. It's close to what you said already. We feel guilty if we don't improve in a certain sense, right? And I would actually claim that's true for all of you. If maybe tomorrow night you sit at home, you feel guilty. I claim, right? If you sit beside the fireplace or wherever you want to sit. I mean, why do you feel guilty? Benjamin Franklin would say, yeah, because you should remember that time is money. Probably you say, well, no, that's not my problem, right? I don't want permanently an increasing amount of money. But I would add to Benjamin Franklin, yeah, but the problem is that in the neoliberal age, you also remember that time is social relations, for example, social capital, right? And then you think, oh, it's true. There's this email by that friend or maybe by the degrowth conference organizers. I should answer that. And I always wanted to call up this friend or this person I know or so on. Or you remember, oh, yeah, that's true. My neighbors, they are new and maybe I should talk to them or so, right? So you remember that your time it could be used for increasing social capital. You can say in a bad way, but actually, but so you probably don't think about it in capital ways because you're not capitalist. But of course, you know it's important to know people, to care for people, to have friends, and so on. And so you try to increase your relationships. Maybe you say, no, I'm not concerned about money. I'm not concerned about social relationship. That's fine. Okay, so then you sit beside the fireplace, and then you remember, oh, maybe actually I should pick up with the news, right? I don't know what's going on in the world. I've lost track of the Ukraine, of Syria, of many other things. So you start reading through the news, or you start reading Shakespeare because you've never done it. Or you say, oh, yesterday he talked about Woodstock. I have this Woodstock movie. Maybe I should see that, right? So actually you remember that time is cultural capital, is knowledge, is increasing your stock of knowledge, of capabilities, and so on. But maybe you say, no, sorry, I don't care for money, I don't care for education, I don't care for friends. Okay, good for you. Then maybe you sit beside the fireplace and remember, actually I could do something for my body, right? Go a little. Okay, I see. Well, that's the neoliberal governmentality, right? You never went for jogging, and you know that movement, physical exercise is good for you. Okay, so you do something for this. Maybe you even don't care for physical exercise and for how you look. But then you remember that for the good life, it's very important to relax, to meditate. So whatever you do, I mean, this is what I say. It creates subjects of guilt. It's very, very hard to get out of this inner urge, right? And you can also go argue this point through to-do lists. At the end of the day, you've never finished the to-do list. But now, okay, so I think you got that point, right? So next point. But I think this is not enough to explain why we cannot get out of this machine of increase, of innovation, of acceleration. Because no system can survive in the long run, and capitalism, for example, survives for more than 200 years now. And no system, I believe, could survive in the long run if it did not have some promise, right? Some attractivity. And I really think it's true if we look at ourselves. It's not just that we feel we have to. We also want to. Now, the interesting question is, what do we want to? And I think that really this is very deeply ingrained culturally, even in the liberal ways of thinking. It comes through our conception of autonomy also, right? That a good life is one that increases our reach over the world, our hold on the world, right? I really believe that when you think of your decisions, I will come to the examples in the end. I want to first make the argument. So the argument is, no, I go through the examples straight away. Otherwise, Stefan Lesnich will stop me, right? So why is money attractive? I'm not sure how attractive it is to you, but I think I found out that for many people who say, I don't care about money at all, it's very interesting, right? When it really comes to money, they all of a sudden care a lot about it. But no matter, why is it not for you, but for other people, money attractive? And I think it's obvious why it is attractive, right? Because when you have a lot of money, right, you can do many things. You bring the world within your reach. If you're really rich, you can afford to fly to Tokyo or San Francisco or Los Angeles or Melbourne tomorrow if you want to. So having a lot of money brings the world within your reach. You can also buy a spectacularly good telescope, or you can buy I don't know what, musical instruments and other things, or maybe even a ship, right? You can do things. You bring the world within your reach. You increase your scope and your hold over the world. So maybe you say, well, but still money is not attractive for me. I can now go through the same spheres as before with the guilt side, right? Now we don't look at guilt, we look at attractivity, right? So why is knowledge interesting for you? Education. Well, you say, I want to learn English or some other language because it opens up a whole new world of knowledge, of literature, of music, of people you can connect to, right? So you want to learn languages, you want to explore new forms of knowledge because it opens up parts of the world. It brings them within your reach. If you know English, you can read Shakespeare in the original and so on, right? And I have to look at my... I had such good ideas. Why is okay? Thanks. Oh yeah, I wanted to make this argument in Germany, like with our school system, right? If a kid wants to be a gardener or a mechanic or a baker, what do you tell him or her? If it's your son or daughter, you tell her, "Oh, still get the high school diploma, the Abitur, right? Why? Oh, because it opens up a whole world of options for you, right? You never know what you want to do in the future, so it's a stock which enables you to do more things." And then there is something which probably is true to you too. Why do people all over the world want to live in cities rather than in the countryside, right? Why? I think for most people it's true who are here. It's true too. Why is Leipzig more interesting than Jena, for example, right? Or than the Black Forest? Well, people move there because it opens up, it gives you possibilities. People in Berlin notoriously say they are so proud of the 3 opera houses. They can go there whenever they want to. They don't go there. but they have the options, right? It increases the range of options. And why is a smartphone attractive? I mean, I know so many people who said, I will never get it. And then maybe they resisted for 2 or 3 years. I even know some who gave it up for a year or so, and then they have it again. And why is it interesting? Why it is attractive? You can say, I don't have it because it's attractive, but then I don't believe you, right? It somehow is attractive. It's of course, it's attractive because it brings the world into your pocket. Right now, I really have the world in my pocket, the knowledge of the world, the literature of the world, the music of the world, the news of the world, and I have all the contacts in my pocket. So I think it's really true. We follow this logic, increasing our range of options, but that's how I described it for many years. Now I would say it's not just the range of options, it's really bringing the world within our reach. That's our conception of the good life, making world available, right? Moving forward towards new horizons. And maybe this is not just bad, right? But in a sense, I would say it is bad. I mean, because it's driving the logic of growth, acceleration, innovation. Now, how do we get it out of our minds? I mean, that's quite difficult, right? If it's true that we follow this logic. And I think if we rethink, we start changing the world, if we rethink what are the important points in your life, right? What are the important moments in your life? What are maybe the secret yearnings which you do not satisfy? I think people wouldn't come to degrowth conferences if this was the perfect way to lead our lives, right? So what's the problem with it? The problem I try to describe with the term of alienation, right? The problem is that you might get the whole world into your reach because you have money and smartphones and other things, but you're in danger. That's what people feel. They can actually feel it. The danger is that it doesn't speak to us anymore, right? It doesn't move us anymore. It becomes a dead and silent world which we command, right? But it doesn't touch us. I think there are so many instances where you can see all the protest forms against this logic of increase. They're almost always inspired by what I call the idea of resonance, but I would rather say the yearning for resonance. You want to be connected. You want to actually, our relationship to the world is of a different kind. The good life, the change, the capitalist way of life, the neoliberal way of life, and the good life, I think the difference is in the way of relating to people, to things, to art, to nature maybe, right? So what do we aspire to? And I think, if I asked you what was the really important moment in your life, in your last year maybe, right? I think almost all of you would come up with a story which ends with, and that really touched me, that really moved me, right? That it's because it left something like a lasting impression on us. And this impression, it's not about a state of mind. Resonance is not a state of mind or emotion. Resonance is a form of relating. And you can see this, for example, in the ecological. A lot of people who are here are inspired by the ecology, by ecological concerns. Why? What is that about? Right? I think it's not about resources. I think the ecological movement is not successful as long as it thinks it's about preserving resources. Because that's exactly in the logic of increasing our reach over the world, right? We need resources to sustain our form of life. But what people really are driven by when they are ecologically concerned is the idea that nature is a sphere which actually has something to tell us, right? People go to the forests, they move to the mountains or to the oceans, because there they feel connected. You can actually, the phenomenology is quite good in describing what happens to us. If you stand at the ocean, at the sea, you change even in the way you stand there. Your physical, your habitus changes. You open up, you feel connected to the waves as they roll in, or to the forest, or to the mountains. And that's why we care about ice bears and other animals, right? Not because they are resources which we might need, but it's something we can connect to. And it's the same with, yeah, I've seen it, 2 minutes. It's the same with, I can go through all the spheres now. In art, for example, right? Why do you care for music, if you care for it? And I think you do, right? Most do. Or for other forms of art, why do people go to museums? It's not about bringing the world in reach in the first place, but people want to be moved, touched. I can make all these arguments. Even in the cinema, right? You like to cry there. You get out of the cinema and say it was such a great movie. I cried so much, right? So how can it be great if you cry? So there you see, it's not about a state of emotions, it's about a state of relating. You relate to a story. Narrations are those things which create resonance in you. You hear a story, you see a story, you feel it, and it touches you and it resonates with you. And I think that's the problem with, that's actually the problem with democracy too, right? In democracy, people aspire for resonance, creating a sphere of resonance. I just read the other day Nancy Love's book, Musical Democracy. I like it very much. Her idea is that the problem with current democracy, why so many people are fed up with it, right? Because this works much more in German than in any other language. The idea is democracy is about making your voice heard, right? Making a voice heard is already a resonance thing, right? And it's, of course, in acting together, in creating a sphere of acting together, creating a sphere of resonance. But the representative form of democracy we have right now is about die Stimme abgeben, right? Sie geben die Stimme ab, right? You vote, and then there's an aggregation of interests and preferences and negotiations and so on. This is nothing to do, this is a betrayal of the resonance quality of acting together, of appropriating the world, of getting the world speak to you, right? And I think in Gezi Park and in Tahrir Square and in Tiananmen Square and in Maidan and in many other places, in Stuttgart and in many other cases, people they really shouted at the public world and at politicians, right? In an attempt to recreate forms of political resonance. So I think what we should do, starting today in Leipzig, is creating public spheres of resonance. Thanks a lot.
I knew this would happen. I told you in advance. He's able to create such a sphere of resonance. It was such a good talk. It moved me so much. I was crying all the time. Touchy.